Let me ask you a question. What's more important, bringing in business or getting the work done? The answer is both. Welcome to another episode of the Jim Roman Show, where we talk about how to build a better business to build a better life. I'm your host, Jim Roman, and I want to welcome you. Welcome to this series on bringing in business. Ultimately, how to remove the roadblocks to growth. If you joined us in our last episode on this series, we talked about the difference between marketing, networking, and selling, where you want to get people to not only know you and like you, but trust you, because if they do, they end up buying from you. During these difficult times, I have found that people are having a challenge for bringing in business. And so I want to talk about what are some of the things that people face when bringing in business. Is it time management? Is it prospecting? I have a lot to share with you today, so I'm super excited. Thank you for joining us. If this is your first time joining us, we want to welcome you. How these episodes go is typically I will talk for 20 minutes on a particular topic. Today is moving the roadblocks to growth, how to make time for bringing in business, or what gets in the way of bringing in business. If I would ask the audience here today, whether you're watching this live or in a recorded episode, if you would write in the comments below, what is your biggest challenge in growing your business? What is the biggest challenge in managing your business and or running your business? I would love to know that. I would love to know that. Also, if you watch this recording afterwards, I always encourage people that if we don't cover the topic that you needed or solve your challenge in regards to this particular topic, please email me, message me. I would love to be able to serve you today. Today is a special treat because I have a lot of notes, and usually if you've seen me speak around the world, I typically just speak from my experience. And I want to do that today, but today in particular, I think is very special because I want to share with you somewhat my journey to success through failing miserably. I find that bringing in business year round makes the biggest difference in the success of a business. It truly does. And so often, what gets in our way? What gets in our way of bringing in business? I heard a statistic years ago that the average person spends 5% of their time or less on bringing in business. Let me say that again. Statistically, it's been proven that most people spend less than 5% at bringing in business. This person went on to talk and said, if you can just get your bringing in business activity to 25%, you would solve a majority of your problems. Now, I shared the statistic in a class years ago, and the gentleman in the class said, oh, no, I don't agree with you. I think I do more than 5%, and I'm going to track it. And they tracked it for a week. And they came back and they shared their tracking, and they had this list of things that they did regarding bringing in business. And ultimately, they found a sad statistic that they actually were spending less than 5%, actually 3%, on bringing in business activities. Wow, that's just shocking. Why is this important? I don't know about you, for me, there's always something getting in the way of me bringing in business. And why do we want to bring in business? I don't look at bringing in business as sales. I look at bringing in business as reaching more people, serving more people. And the more people that I can make customers, the more impact that I can have on them and their lives. I think you probably have the same thing with your product and services. So today I want to talk about the things that get in the way of bringing in business so that you can be able to live the life that you want, to be able to have the lifestyle you deserve. So let's jump right into it. So again, the statistic number one, I think number one reason why we don't bring enough business to be able to have the money, to be able to have a life that we have, is that we spend less than 5% of our time on bringing in business activities. So I would encourage you, if you don't believe that, is to track it yourself. I always like, try before you buy. Try it out, see if it applies to you. So I would encourage you over the next 7 days to track how much time you bring in business, or pull out your calendar later today and see what activities you're bringing in business, getting the work done, being distracted, and other. If you're like me, you'll be very surprised that most of your time is spent on other things than that of bringing in business. Number two, thing that you could do to remove the roadblocks to growth, to bring in more business, is how you prepare for your prospecting. I want to talk about three things. One is how you prepare for your prospecting. So when it comes to preparing for your prospecting, are you the type of person who is what I call fixing to get ready? That's a Southern term I learned in Virginia when I moved there. Fixing to get ready is the type of person who is going to prospect and spends more time preparing the prospect than they actually do prospecting. I remember me when back in the day, what I would do, I remember this clearly, back in the 90s, where I would get ready to prospect. You got to prospect. You got to bring in business. You got to pay the bills. And so I would get my business cards out, and I would sort my business cards out from A, B's, and C's. The A's were the people I think would do business with me. They're in my target market. The B's would be I don't know, and then the C's probably won't get to them, and I would organize them. And then I realized, well, I need some coffee. Now that I got it all organized and I'm ready to prospect, let me go get some coffee. And I go get some coffee. I come back, and I looked at my cards again, and I said, you know what? I don't think they're organized perfectly. So I reorganized my organization. I don't know if you're like that, but you might draw a list to your list to your lists. And so one of the things to be able to do is prepare better. But the reason why I bring this up is that I prepared myself out of business. Some of you know my story. My dad passed away of a heart attack at age 62. When he died, the restaurant our family owned died. And in the last episode, I shared with you in the 90s, in 1996, how I almost gave up on this industry. I almost gave up completely because I thought someone said no to me when they didn't say no to me. They actually said, come back next week. Not only will I write a check to you, I'll get you other people to buy from you as well. You can go check out that episode to learn more about that story. But what you don't know, what came before that story is 1993. In 1993, I was running a restaurant in Hampton, Virginia. I was the general manager of this restaurant, working 80 hours a week. And I was thinking, you know what? I'm working 80 hours for somebody else. Why don't I work 80 hours for myself? So I went on my own and started my own business in 1993 to only go broke and bankrupt in 1995. Actually, the bankruptcy wasn't until 96. And in that process, I ended up going homeless for a short period of time. I lost everything. And why? I remember the day that it changed for me, that things just went down the tubes. I was doing my preparing for my prospecting, getting my prospects in order, and about to pick up the phone when I get a call from a friend of mine that says, Jim, I'm leaving the company. I'm switching companies. And I'm like, what? You're switching companies? And he goes, yes. I can't tell you about it, but I just wanted you to hear it from me and not somebody else. And I was like, okay, I'm coming over your house. And I literally dropped what I was doing and went over his house to find out what was happening. Ultimately, what I was doing is I was avoiding picking up the phone. I was not willing to make the sales calls. I wasn't willing to make the cold calls. I wasn't willing to make the prospect calls. And I think a lot of times that's the case for a lot of us. We don't want to do it, and forcing ourselves is not enough. See, I think the reason why I wasn't willing to make the call, one of them was I wasn't passionate about my product. I was selling security systems in a network marketing model, and that was not exciting to me. I have a black belt in karate, but selling security did not match up with that. And so as much as I like to secure and keep people safe through martial arts, I didn't care about my product, that being security alarm systems. And so I didn't make my phone calls. I went broke and bankrupt, ended up going homeless shortly after that, to only come around in 1996, where the story continues to be successful, getting a mentor, guiding me, teaching me to bring me to where I'm at today. So I ask you, are you having call reluctance because maybe you're not passionate about your products? Maybe you're not going after the right prospects. See, I find a lot of times we're not hitting our sales is because the prospect we're going after needs and wants our services, but is not willing to pay for it. In other words, I always ask people, how many people out there need your product and service? Raise their hands. And I was like, oh, they need it. How many people want your product and service? And people go, oh, they want it. How many people need and want, but aren't willing to pay for it? And everyone's like, yeah, I have that. Well, sometimes we're not prospecting the right prospect. And that's another reason why we don't get past the roadblock to growth, is because we're going after anybody and everybody. I'll give you an example. I talked about in the last episode about property managers. If I was a property manager and I wanted to bring in more business, one of the best ways of doing that is through realtor relationships, building relationships with realtors who don't do property management and don't want to do property management. But a second target market are what's called those investors who have 6 to 7 properties. When you get to 6 to 7 properties, even 8 properties, I'm told in the industry it becomes a job. And you never got into real estate investing to be a job. And if you already have a full-time job, then you don't want to be able to deal with that headache as well on top of having a family. And that is a perfect opportunity for a property management company to come in and take that over. And then the third type are people who are accidental owners, where they inherited a property or they can't sell their own real estate property and they need to do something to be able to do something about it, and they rent that out and they get a property manager to do that. so they don't have to deal with the legal issues. And so you can see in that example that if you're going after anybody and everybody, for example, if someone who has 3 properties that they manage, they may not want a property manager. But if they have 8 properties, then they most likely will want to use a property management company in that scenario. So again, I think a lot of times the roadblock to our growth is, number one, we're fixing to get ready. We're spending all their time, like I did, trying to get ready to make those calls that I was, number 2, reluctant to make because I wasn't I didn't have passion behind my product. And then number 3, going after target market that may need it and want it, but not willing to pay for it. So if it were me and I were you, I would prepare to prospect. So there's 3 aspects we'll talk about. So again, the first part is preparing for prospecting, using a pipeline. We use what's called a harvest sheet. You might use CRM, customer relationship management software. These are great tools to help you prepare for your prospecting and making your prospecting more powerful. So what I would do next is, if now I'm preparing to prospect, now I have to actually prospect before I do the 3rd thing. So what can I do to be effective in my prospecting? I took some notes. We talked about this in the last episode. Is number 1, having a marketing message. Some of the reasons why you're not getting the right type of business or getting any business is your marketing message is off. I'll give you several examples. I was working with a Mary Kay rep, and I know a lot of people work with Mary Kay reps. And if you meet a Mary Kay person, they're wonderful people. Most of them are successful if they can get past this one thing. When you ask a new Mary Kay representative, who do they want to be introduced to? The number 1 answer is anybody with skin. Anybody with skin. Now, this is interesting because I heard this story years ago where up in Northern Virginia, a Mary Kay person said this to a person, and he said, well, who specifically? And she insisted it was anybody with skin. And he cared so much about her so that he said, okay, fine, I think I have a referral for you. So rumor has it, a week later, he comes back with 7 referrals for this Mary Kay person. And right before he handed the Mary Kay person these referrals, he said, just want to be clear, you wanted anybody with skin? And she said, yes. And he said, great, I have 7 referrals. I sit on the board of a homeless shelter, and these 7 people are homeless. They all have skin, and so here are the referrals. And she realized in that moment that maybe anybody with skin isn't a good referral for her. Now, if you're in Mary Kay long enough, you'll find out some of the best referrals for Mary Kay representatives are realtors, teachers, and nurses. Interesting enough, if you met with Mary Kay people and they've been in the business long enough and you tell them, I'm like, yeah, exactly, realtors, nurses, and teachers. Why? Why realtors, nurses, and teachers? Number 1, these people are in front of groups of people. And because they're in groups of people, they want to look the best. The second thing is they want to feel the best. And that's one of the things that's wonderful about Mary Kay and Avon and other organizations like that, is they look after women's well-being, making them feel empowered and be able to have that, that presentation in front of the people that makes the biggest difference. So you can see the difference there from a target market perspective is anybody with skin versus teachers, realtors, and nurses who are in front of people. They want to have that positive image, that positive attitude to make an impact with the people that they serve. So I'd be asking myself, do you have the right marketing message? For me, I would say for years, I helped business owners and their teams have more time and more money. Boring. But then over time, I said, well, I'm a business coach. Okay. Or a business consultant. Oh, I can't afford that. I found that those messages were not magnetic enough until one of my colleagues was at a retail place. Someone asked her what she did, and she says, oh, we help companies go from micro to millions while having a life. And the person said, oh my God, I need that. You see how powerful that magnetic message is, that we help people go from micro to millions, whether you want to get to $250,000, $500,000, or $1 million or more, but have a life in the process. I followed up with that exact same magnetic message. I was in the elevator one time and someone asked me what I did, and I said, well, let me try this new magnetic message. One of my colleagues came up, I said, we help micro to millions while having a life, and the person goes, oh, my husband needs to talk to you, or my cousin needs to talk to you, or a friend of mine who's starting his business needs to talk to you. So a lot of times we're not getting the business that we need is because our message is not magnetic. I would love for those who are watching this right now, one of you right now are saying, that's me, Jim, that is me. Comment below, message me in the comments, or email me at questions@askjimroman.com. I would love to help you work on your magnetic message, because I think for some of us, if we can tie our magnetic message to our mission, the impact that we want to make, it will help us bring in more business, and then we'll have the life that we want. So that's just another thing in prospecting and being more effective in your prospecting is having a powerful magnetic message. We've already talked about target market. I can do a whole topic on target market, finding people who not only need, want, and desire. For example, in real estate, if you're a first-time home buyer, maybe you want to work with those type of people. People downsizing, senior market, people moving. There's a lot of target markets in the real estate industry that you could choose. It doesn't mean you only pick that target market, but you build a marketing message around that target market. You build a network around that target market, and you get more referrals in that target market. Again, you can help everybody, but you'll help more people by getting specific. And the last thing I find that people have challenges with when it comes to actually being effective at prospecting is knowing the number of appointments you have to have on a weekly basis. In other words, some of you are just working hard, and at the end of the week, at the end of the month, you hope you have enough money. But knowing the number of appointments you need on a weekly basis, number of sales you need on a monthly basis will make the world of difference. And again, I have a game-changing story for you. I remember I was involved in an organization called BNI, Business Network International, and I was the area director for this particular franchise before I owned it. And I remember I was in the west end of Richmond, Virginia. I was sitting in my car, drinking a cup of coffee from 7-Eleven, and I get a phone call from my mentor, Lisa. And Lisa says, Jim, how are you doing? And I said, I'm doing good, Lisa. And she can hear in my voice that I wasn't as happy as I normally am. She says, you seem kind of down. I said, yeah, today's the 20th. I've only got 10 days left in the month, and I don't think I'm going to hit my number. She goes, what do you mean? I said, well, I want to hit 60 new members this month, and I'm not even close. And so I don't know. And she didn't know I was thinking I was just going to quit for the rest of the day and quit for the rest of the month, to be honest with you. I just noticed I quit a lot, so I got to stop doing that. She says, 60, I thought your number was 40. And I'm like, what do you mean my number is 40? My number is 60. She goes, how did you come up with 60? I'm like, I don't know. She says, if I remember correctly, your number is 40. And I was like, oh, 60 was a company record. And if I hit it, then I, would do really well and I would impress you and stuff like that. So my number is 40. I'm at 33. I'm only 7 members away from my goal. Lisa, I got to go. Thanks for the call. And I hung up the phone and I went. In fact, if I remember correctly, I brought in 10 more members that month. Blew past the 7. And the moral of the story there is I didn't know my number. My mentor knew my number better than me. And for some of you, you're only 1 number away from hitting your goals. But you're trying to do 10, 20, 30 sales a month when you only need to do 5 or 6 or 7. So knowing your numbers when it comes to prospecting, in this case, the number of appointments, the number of presentations, the number of proposals that you need. If you're in life insurance, it's not the number of second-time appointments. Your first-time appointment, you don't count. It's always the second appointment in the life insurance industry that makes the biggest difference. And so I think a lot of us don't know that number, and I would encourage you to sit down, take the time to do that number. How do you do it? Real simple, real quick, is you take your revenue goal, your commission goal, divide that by your average sale, will give you the number of deals that you want. Let me say that again. Your revenue goal, your commission goal, divided by your average deal, your average commission, will give you the number of deals. And then you take the number of deals and divide it by your closing ratio. And that'll tell you how many appointments, proposals, or presentation you need to do on a monthly basis, and then divide it by 4.5 weeks or 4.3 weeks, by 20 days, depending on how many days of the month you work. And you get that number. For me, I need to have 6 presentations a week. If I have 6 presentations or speaking engagements, I will equal X amount of appointments will lead to X amount of sales. So knowing that number knows that if I hit that number every single week, I will hit my number every single month. So that's just another thing that you can be doing. So the third and final thing I want to talk about today is follow-up, the follow-up factor. So again, what we've talked about in removing the roadblocks to growth. In the first episode, we talked about knowing the difference between marketing, networking, and selling. The second thing we talked about is target market, which we also talked about today. The third thing we talked about in the first episode is having the number of strategies that fit your personality, whether you're introvert and extrovert. Today, we're talking about preparing to prospect, actual prospecting, and then the final secret sauce is the follow-up. The follow-up. And I actually found this statistic. This is an old statistic I will share with you, and I will post it as well. These are sales statistics that when I heard, I was just blown away. And it's regarding follow-up. Here it is. 48% of salespeople never follow up with prospects. 25% of salespeople make a second contact and stop. Second contact and stop. The 12% of salespeople only make 3 contacts and then stop. And only 10% of salespeople make more than 3 contacts to get the sale. That is mind-blowing. In other words, long story short, if you stop at just 1 follow-up, you're most likely not going to have a good closing ratio and most likely not get the business. After 2, your odds go up. After 3, they go up exponentially. Studies have shown it takes at least 7 contacts for somebody to want to buy from you. I'm going to assume that it's going to take 7 follow-ups until they say yes or until they say no. I think most people give up well before they should. In fact, one of my favorite books on this topic is Go for No. Go for No talks about persistence, the power of being persistent. And it isn't what you think it is. When I first read this book, I thought, oh, you keep on following up and follow up and follow up until they say no. And interesting enough, I have found that many people don't end up saying no because you never follow up enough. If you want to get really good at follow-up and persistence, read these inspiring stories. It's a very thin book. Another book that I really enjoy was How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success by Frank Bettger. And Frank talks in this book about how he figured out his average phone call that he made back in the day when the book was written, was in the 1950s, still relevant today, that every time he picked up the call, whether they bought or not, every time was worth $2.16. Meaning he did the math. He did the math based on the number of phone calls he did in the month, how much money he made. He found out that every time he picked up the phone, it was worth $2.16. And so the more calls he made, the more money that he makes. And he goes into the whole story about that. And again, that's the 1950s statistics. You can equate that to a lot more money now. And he talks in one of the chapters how he changed from $2.16 to a lot more than that. What's my point? Is I feel that we are reluctant in our follow-up. And then if we were to follow up on our prospects and follow up and follow up and follow up, it would make the world of difference. Our closing ratio would go up, our incomes would go up as well. So why don't most people follow up? I think it's the reason why most people don't make sales, is they're looking at it as sales versus serving. Let me say that again, but a different way. I don't look at selling as selling anymore because I don't know anybody who wants to be sold. Now, I know people who love to buy. And so how can I get into that mindset of getting people to buy from me is look at, I'm not selling them when I call them. I'm not selling them when I present to them. I'm serving them. I'm making a difference in their life. For example, in my business as a coach and a consultant, when someone hires us, a lot of times is they're not making enough money to pay their bills. And if they're not making enough money to pay their bills, it's stressing them out and a lot of times affecting their marriage. And so you could argue they're hiring me for coaching and consulting, but really they're hiring me to be able to help them to make more money to make their marriage a lot better. And more importantly, equally important, is their life better because they don't have to deal with that stress. I find people are not bringing enough business to be able to afford better people. The people that they hired originally were the people they could afford. But they really need A players. They need more performing players. And they just don't have the money to be able to pay those kind of salaries or those hourly rates. And so if I look at it that I'm not selling them a service, but I'm serving them and their needs, whether it's to make more money, to have less stress, to provide for their family, or to make more money, to hire better people so they can have a life beyond the business, and remind myself every time I pick up the phone and every time I go networking, every time I do a presentation, it's really more about serving the society than it is to selling the society. And I think that's a mental shift. At least that was for me. If you know my story, and I've told it many times, I hated selling in the very beginning. I avoided selling. The buying process that I've created over the last 15 years was purely out of I hated selling and I hated rejection. So since I hated selling and I hated rejection, I needed to pay my bills and provide. I figured out a way to be able to counter that. I want to be able to counter that. And I have learned so many things in the books that I recommend on how to get past that. Whether it's understanding the 4 types of salespeople, whether it's being indispensable, or all the other books that are wonderfully out there for you to read and learn to be able to be a better servant that will lead to more sales. So in closing, as I love to do is just recap what we've talked about, then look at the comments, and then hopefully hear from you what you got out of today while we can serve you in future episodes. So today what we talked about ultimately is preparing the prospect and stop fixing to get ready and figure out the purpose and passion behind your product and service. I believe if you have a purpose and passion, you'll do less fixing to get ready and more doing and serving. We then talked about actually being more effective in your prospecting by having a magnetic message. Go after a target market that needs, wants, and will buy your service, and your marketing message plays a big difference in that. And then ultimately know the number of appointments you need on a monthly basis and a weekly basis and daily basis so that you don't overwork yourself. And then finally, the follow-up factor, that the statistics are here, that the average persons don't typically go past the first follow-up, the second follow-up, and rarely the third follow-up. And I ask you, I implore you to follow up, follow up, follow up, because people need your services. They want your services. And I believe they'll buy your services so you can make a difference in their life and in their families and in their communities. I hope you enjoyed our session today in removing the roadblocks to growth. We're going to continue this series. Love to hear from you. Comment below, like this, share this, and join us next Wednesday at 12 o'clock. We'll continue to be able to help you build a better business to build a better life. I'm Jim Roman. The more you know, the more we grow. Cool. As I look through the comments, I want to just say thank you. If you're still with us today, please comment below what is one thing that you got out of today. What did you enjoy most about what we talked about today? Also, if you don't mind, if you would email me, message me, any challenges that you're having with building your business, growing your business, managing your business. I would really, really, really love to know about that, because I think that would make a big, big difference. And then email me at questions@askjimroman.com with any challenges that you're facing, because we would love to cover those over the time that we do. The reason why we do this is, you know, I tell you my story that I went broke and bankrupt and homeless. I've had challenging days just like anybody else, and I just want to be able to give back. My mentors and the people that I've learned from these books as well have made me successful through my failures. I would hopefully help you become successful without the failures. So again, I want to thank you. If you're watching this live or watching this after record it, join us every Wednesday at 12 o'clock where we pick a new topic or continue this series of helping you remove the roadblocks to growth so that you can build a better business to build a better life. Again, thank you for all your positive comments. Thank you for all your emails, all your messages. It really means a difference that we're making an impact, and this is a value. Again, if there's anything else we could be doing or be covering, please let me know. I always love serving your needs. And so with that being said, we will just finish up. Thank you again for all of you who were here. And tune in next week at 12 o'clock live.